Welcome to the Cunningham Piano Show Podcast, where we explore the world of pianos and the people behind them. I'm your host, Hugh Sung, and in this episode, I'm really pleased to welcome to the show jazz pianist and jazz master James Austin Jr. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Hugh. Good to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sure. It's great to have you on the show. And we're excited because you and your band, you have a trio coming to perform at Cunningham Piano's Cherry Hill Showroom this Sunday, June 23rd at 3 p.m. We're very excited about the upcoming concert and excited to explore a little bit about you, your music, your background, so that everybody can come and really appreciate what a great show you have planned for them. We're going to get into some of those details first, but I thought maybe the best way to introduce you would be to let your music speak for you. What do you think?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, we got now. I
What are you gonna play?
understand. We're going to play a little clip of you performing at this wonderful venue. I assume this is up in New York called Cellar Dog. Tell me a little bit about Cellar
Yeah.
Dog. That looks like such an
Yeah, Cellar
awesome
Dog.
place.
Yeah, Cellar Dog is a very fun place. It's been around for a long time. It used to be known as Fat Cat back in the day, and then
Right.
they reopened a few years ago with new management under a new name, but the same general vibe. I mean, they spruced the place up a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's the same general vibe where there's music, there's billiards, there's chess, there's all kinds of other fun
Shuffleboard.
games, and so,
Oh,
so
this
sort
is
of a unique mix, but a real fun place.
and
And they've kept the music going for a lot of years, and so we always have a good time playing there. We always enjoy
that's
it. Yeah.
that's fantastic. Excuse me, a little frog jumping down my throat. Let's listen to you playing a little bit of Stevie Wonder because I understand that you have your debut out, your premiere album featured the works of your arrangements of some Stevie Wonder songs. So I thought it'd be appropriate to play a little selection of your arrangement of one of Stevie Wonder's songs for this video clip. What do you say?
Sounds good.
All right. Boy, that sounds terrific. And what was the name of that Stevie Wonder song?
That was My Cherie Amour, one of Stevie's most enduring compositions, and that was the first one I did years and years and years and years ago. I had the idea to throw some more popular songs into the mix. I mean, as you know, the jazz repertoire, especially if you're sort of a traditionalist, tends to be the Great American Songbook and
Hmm.
standards and even jazz compositions, most of them, which were composed, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, in branching out and adding in some Stevie Wonder compositions, I found that we were able to sort of expand our audience a little bit, and people know the music. They like the music. It's just fun. It's really accessible and listenable, and it's still, in saying all of that, it still is a pretty uh, cool vehicle for jazz improvisation as well. So
Yeah.
years ago, I started with that song, and then over the years, I've just added a tune here and there, and then I had the idea, well, I've got enough tunes. I should do a record and feature some of these Stevie Wonder arrangements that I've been playing, and I'm really really fortunate that it's been so well received.
Mm,
It's been a few years now since I released the record, but everywhere I've been, people really love it. They look forward to me playing Stevie Wonder. They ask for it all the time, and so
wow.
and the good thing about Stevie is he wrote so much great music. I mean, he's
Yeah.
really one of the most prolific composers, I'd say, in American history, probably.
Mm.
So because he wrote so much good music, I only did one volume, but I could probably do 10 more volumes and not run out of songs to play because he just wrote so much great music.
That's so cool. And the name of the album is Songs in the Key of Wonder. And I'll see if I can
That's
have a
right.
link in the show notes to that. The Songs in the Key of Wonder. Wonderful arrangement. And I want to talk a little bit. You kind of touched on the whole kind of the repertoire, if we would call it the classic repertoire for a standard jazz performer. And I was reading your bio, and you've done some incredible things. You were a performer and semifinalist in the Thelonious Monk International Jazz Piano Competition. You also did some extensive studies with Dr. Barry Harris, and I want to really focus on Dr. Harris a little bit in our exploration of your background. You're currently the head of the Barry Harris Institute of Jazz, and you formed Luminescence, kind of a young jazz musicians ensemble. And just again, you've performed at Carnegie Hall. You play in New York City on a regular basis. Done some wonderful, wonderful things. So I want to talk a little bit about maybe your background. Let's talk about Barry Harris himself, because I'm coming from the classical world, so I'm not as well versed in terms of the repertoire or the luminaries. But Dr. Barry Harris was one of the greatest jazz educators, and from what I understand, he was a proponent of what we call the bebop school of jazz. And can you help me and help us all understand what is bebop and what makes it so special?
Yeah, well, so those are two tricky questions, right? So to define bebop, I would say bebop is really the music that came out of the innovators of the late 40s, people like Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, Fats Navarro, Bud Powell. Those are like the fathers, or the sort of the architects of the bebop school of playing. Especially Charlie Parker, probably more than anyone. He's probably the most influential modern jazz musician, of all time. And so the music that came out of that era is really, really what we call bebop. In terms of what makes it so special, that's another a whole nother angle. I mean, there's is the rhythm of it, the harmony of it, the innovative ways that they would take the standard repertoire, which tended to be songs from the Great American Songbook, people like Cole Porter or George Gershwin, that kind of stuff. They would take their compositions, but play it in a way that you would still know that you were listening to the song, but they would be taking certain liberties harmonically and melodically uh, to to um, to sort of enhance and improvise basically over it. Um, you know, there have been other, as you know, extensions and I guess you could say, how should I say, other uh, uh, offspring of of this music. There's avant-garde, and there's fusion, and there's all kinds of other developments. But for me, bebop is the music that really speaks to me. I like that it's daring, it's innovative, but it also maintains some of the essential harmonic and melodic qualities that are what I listen for when I'm listening to someone improvise. I don't really resonate as much with some of the more avant-garde stuff where some of it just sounds like organized noise, or sometimes
Mm,
not so organized noise for me.
sure.
I really tend to gravitate more towards the Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, Bud Powell sort of school. So that's just that, and all of this is a matter of taste, right? So it's just a matter of taste. And fortunately for me, I was 19 years old. I encountered Barry Harris, and he was all about what I was looking for, which is
Mm,
how do I how do I how do I learn how to improvise and play solos that make sense, and actually played phrases and lines, improvised lines that actually go with the harmonies of the songs that I'm trying to
mm,
play with. And I would listen to great improvisers, people like Hank Mobley and Dexter Gordon, and other Sonny Stitt, some of these big names. And I say, man, when they played it, it sounds so good, and it feels so good, and it's
mm.
so well put together and so logical. And even though they're playing fast, and they're fast and furious, it all makes sense, and it feels good, and it doesn't, it still sounds good,
It all
and
fits,
Barry was the one
Yeah.
who was able to kind of help me and help so many musicians over the years understand, here's how you approach improvising over these songs.
Mm.
Here's a method. Like, before there was jazz in the schools, there was Barry Harris, right?
Wow.
Before you could get a degree in music, in jazz music. You could always, you could get a degree in classical music, but before there was any jazz department, Barry was teaching folks, here's how you play jazz, and so
Mm.
he kind of was a university of the streets, so to speak,
Mm.
which is what makes him, partly what makes him one of the greatest educators. He came up with a whole pedagogical approach that was his own unique thing before it was being done, so yeah.
Mm. And it's amazing. He just passed away actually during the pandemic, just a few years ago. And from what I read, he was teaching Zoom classes about less than 3 weeks before he died. He was teaching right up to the very, very end. Just an incredibly dedicated jazz educator. I wish I could have had a chance to have met the man. He sounds like, what was he like to work with?
He was really, really special, and you used the one right word. I mean, dedication is
Mm.
really the best word to describe him. I mean, literally, he started influencing and teaching and bringing along younger musicians, even when he was still a very young musician himself. So, in
Mm.
his late 20s and early 30s, he was already mentoring. One of his earliest proteges was the late great bassist Paul Chambers, who he started working with in the 50s. So you have to imagine, one of his more recent proteges is the great vocalist Samara Joy, who just won several Grammys. You probably have heard of her. She's a
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderfully talented vocalist. She was one of his one of his younger students. So think about it. His lineage of students goes from Paul Chambers to Samara Joy. We're literally talking about 6 or 7 decades of
Wow.
influencing and teaching. So it's a really, 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 really amazing story. He was a really amazing figure, and I'm so lucky to have been a part of his life, and to have gotten
Mm.
close to him, and then to have been charged with being one of a select group of folks that are sort of carrying on his legacy with the organization that we formed in his name and in his honor. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So maybe you could spend a few minutes telling us, will you be playing, what style of jazz will we be hearing this coming Sunday?
So it definitely will be bebop influenced for sure, because that's just part of who I am.
Mhm.
But we'll play a mix of, we'll do some Stevie Wonder songs, some of the songs that we did on the recording, songs in the key of wonder. We'll play some standards for sure. Some of the songs from the Great American Songbook, whether it's Cole Porter or George Gershwin or whoever. We'll play we'll play some jazz classics, maybe some songs that were composed by the likes of Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, that kind of thing. But we'll mix it up a little bit. But for sure, I know we'll play some jazz standards, and I know we'll play some Stevie Wonder, because I'm always they're always looking for me to do that at least.
That's so great. It's going to be a wonderful concert. Let's talk a little bit about your approach to jazz. You, of course, have a tremendous influence through Dr. Barry Harris. How have you taken what he's given you, and how have you permeated that into your own? How have you molded it into your own style? If you could describe the way you approach music and what you try to convey through your interpretations.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, really, it is heavily influenced, as I said before, it's heavily influenced by the tradition, the bebop tradition. But I think I take a lot more liberties, both in terms of repertoire. So, for example, Barry did play a few. He had a couple of Stevie Wonder tunes in his bag, but I take more liberties in playing some more contemporary music and playing some stuff that may not have been a part of the quote unquote traditional jazz repertoire. But also, seek to even bring to new repertoire the same kind of sensibility in terms of melodic and harmonic tastefulness and rhythmic sophistication. Really using syncopated rhythms and that was part of what the brilliance of Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and those guys, Max Roach. That was part of the brilliance was what they were doing rhythmically. Just for me, it's all about making the music sound good and making it feel good. And if those two things are accomplished, I'm a happy camper. Um I don't try to I do think the music is a very sophisticated music, and I do try to be sophisticated in my approach, but I'm not looking to be overly cerebral when it comes to.
Hmm.
I really want to have a good time, and I want the audience to have a good time, and so I think top of mind is we want to sound good and we want to feel good, even at the expense of doing some things that might be, um, musical calisthenics, so to speak. I really just want to get a good feeling, and really harmonically, melodically, rhythmically. That's all I'm going for is just making it feel good.
I think in the classical music world, I mean, there has been this tension, particularly, in I guess the 40s, 50s, and the 70s, between cerebral music kind of written in theoretical terms, and music written for its own sake to advance. You think of Schoenberg and the way that he took 12 tone, he developed 12 tone music and a system for not letting one tone dominate the others and giving freedom to individual tones, which led to serialism, which led to kind of this explosion of uh, composers trying to come up with the next innovative thought or idea or sound that it looks great on paper, and in many ways really kind of it's almost like theoretical physics. It's nothing that really is meant to be applied to the average listen, but it advances the field in a theoretical way. And I know jazz has also, I mean, jazz itself is you're taking these basic chords and finding ways to extend them and build on them. I remember reading or watching a tutorial of somebody explaining what jazz harmony actually does. And basically, you're like Schoenberg in a sense that you're taking those tones and expanding every tone on top as much as you can so that every note has its new unique center of gravity. And I found that kind of connection really fascinating. The fact, that jazzers, and you are almost thinking, as one friend told me, you're thinking in three dimensions constantly, or four dimensions, right? The harmonic, the melodic, the rhythmic. There's these three components that always have to be juxtaposed. And you're also looking for interesting ways to navigate that are not obvious. Where you allude to the melody, you allude to the harmony, you try to find new ways to kind of find new boundaries around them. And yet, as I think what I'm hearing from you, sometimes the listener, we forget the listener. I mean, I'm talking in terms of the more the cerebral approach to music, and where the listener is almost left behind, and it's very difficult for them to understand what's going on. And I'm hearing from you just kind of this wholesome approach, like this is great music, these are great ideas, but we don't want to forget that we want people to have a good time. And yes, there's sophistication, but we still want to have fun, and we don't want to leave people so they're completely lost in a song or a melody. We want to make sure that they're still along for the ride, and we're not just playing over their heads. Is that what I'm hearing a little bit?
No, that's absolutely right. But I would just remind the audience that even in Chopin was an improviser.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
They would improvise over even in that style, in the romantic style, they would improvise all the time. So improvisation doesn't necessarily mean you know very very meaningful improvisation doesn't necessarily mean reinventing the wheel. Sometimes you can take
Mm,
familiar stuff and just put your own unique spin. And Barry would always remind us that there's nobody, not Charlie Parker, not Dizzy Gillespie, not Bud Powell. There's nobody who's played it all. There's always new. there's always new ways. Charlie Parker may show you a phrase where he plays an idea up, and then Barry would say, "Well, why couldn't you do the same thing and play it down with the same
Hmm.
idea?" Right? There's just infinite number of melodic and harmonic possibilities, and I think sometimes people that in particular the avant-garde folks, they feel like they have to do something that is so far away that it hasn't been done. But what I like to think is there are things that are related that haven't been done. They sound just as good. It's just that the music is so broad and so big that you can be influenced without completely going to the whole different a whole different universe or stratosphere. You can still be unique and bring out your own personality and your own vibe while also still maintaining some of the tradition. And so that's sort of the angle where I am. And I don't disparage or you know take anything away from anyone who has a different approach or different idea. But I really like, I just feel like the music of Bird and Bud and Monk and that music and the music that was influenced by those guys, it's listenable. It feels good. It sounds good. And then after a certain while, once we get too cerebral, it starts to be just a thing for musicians and for the initiated, and the average person doesn't understand what the hell you're doing, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't have the same rhythmic, um, the certain groove to it. I mean, for music to sound good, feel good. It has to have a certain groove. It has to have a certain harmonic sense. Not that the harmonies are not moving all over the place in some kind of illogical or random manner. But there's like traditional harmony, traditional classical harmony, even traditional jazz harmony. They're all movements that make sense, and when you hear them, they resonate with folks because it's like, oh yeah, that D minor going to G7 to C major makes all the sense in the world, right? So
Mm, mhm, mhm, mhm.
so anyway, that's sort of where I am with it. But yeah, I think that there's so many possibilities, and that's what Barry was all about. He was
Mm.
about showing us that nobody's played it all. There's so much to learn and so much that we can explore even within this tradition. There's so much to do. So yeah.
Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful being a musician and being in this world, this sandbox where we get to play and just explore and just constantly find new things. It's just this growing art that just never stops growing. Isn't that amazing to be a part of
It
that?
is. It is. It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I just think what Barry would always say, even he was just shy of his 92nd birthday, but he would always say, um, "Whenever I'm in the class, that just means I'm the oldest student in the class." That's all. He's still
Yeah.
learning, even after all of those decades of devotion, dedication, realizing that every day that he shows up, he's just the oldest student in the class. So yeah.
Sounds like you are really taking on Barry's mantle and really doing a wonderful job of keeping his legacy alive and passing it on to the next generation of jazz students. So I applaud you for that. That's amazing.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, we're doing what we can. I'm not the only one. There's a group of us that are coming together. But yeah, I'm really pleased to be a part of it, and pleased that I had the opportunity to get to know him so well, and to really be touched by his life and his work and his teaching. Yeah.
Fantastic. And just before we close, maybe you want to share beyond the concert that's taking place this Sunday at the Cunningham Piano Cherry Hill Showroom this Sunday, June 23rd at 3 o'clock. Beyond this concert, what's coming up for you next? What are some of your future
Oh, I have.
projects?
Yeah, sure. So I am going to be working on a new project. I'm overdue to get back in the studio after doing that Stevie Wonder project. So that's a goal of mine this year. But I have some wonderful performances coming up. I perform at least once a month at Cellar Dog. You mentioned Cellar
Oh,
Dog.
nice. Where
I
where is
believe the
Cellar
next
Dog?
time
Because
I'll be
I
there.
want to see if I can I want to see if I can stop by at some point. I would love to visit you there.
Yeah, it's in the
What?
West Village on Christopher Street, just
Okay.
just west of Seventh Avenue South.
Oh,
So
nice.
in
Okay.
the village. Yeah, yeah. And then
Eh,
on August 13th, I'll be at Lincoln Center at Dizzy's Club Coca-Cola,
mhm.
and we'll be doing the Barry Harris tribute. So the group
Nice.
Luminescence that I formed will be performing there, and it's going to be a really special concert. We have Lewis
Mm.
Nash, who will be our special guest, joining us, and he's one of the great, great, great all-time great drummers. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be a big deal. And I've got other other performances. My website is jamesaustinjr.com, and so I'm not always great at it, but I try to keep that updated with shows and things that are coming up. So yeah,
I hear you. Yeah, that's great. I'll make sure we have a link to your website in the show notes
awesome.
below. So, James, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us and to give us something to be excited about. We're so excited about your upcoming concert at Cunningham Piano Cherry Hill this coming Sunday at 3 o'clock. We're so excited to hear you and to have our audience meet you and to experience your wonderful jazz. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Hugh. My pleasure. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Yeah, you too. And for the Cunningham Piano Show, I'm Hugh Sung. Thanks as always for watching and listening, and we'll see you all next time.